Hello, Online English 12 students. It's Mila with your video for week 12. I have these sunglasses on, which are cute, by the way. I like them. And they're prescription because it's a prop for one of the motifs emerging in Hamlet, which is the fancy educated word is voyeurism, or you could also say spying. There's a lot of watching going on right now in the play. So again, it's a motif running through the whole thing. So I'm going to summarize some of Act 2 that I don't want to give it away before you read it. But anyway, okay. For this week, you didn't have school on Monday. It's an in-service. And so we have 4 days. I did ask you to read Acts 1 and 2, so there'll be a quiz that I'll release on Wednesday. And then I want you just to read Act 3 this week. There's a whole lot of really, really important things that happen in Act 3. And then I have an assignment for you to analyze Act 3, Scene 4, the last scene. And that is the big blow up between Hammy and his mammy. I like to call Hamlet Hammy. Anyway, I'm going to try to go through some of the things that I didn't talk about before, and then some of the things that are going to come up in Act 3, and hopefully not be a spoiler for you. I hope, by the way, when you see this, that you had a really nice Easter weekend, because you had a 4-day weekend. Okay, let's see. So I talked about them. Okay, the spines, specifically, Polonius is the biggest spy of all. Like, he loves to creep on people. So he actually sends a servant to go and see what's up with Laertes in France, and he's like a control freak. He tells this kid exactly what to ask. In fact, he says stuff like, "Hey, don't tell people, that you really know Laertes well. Just say you know of his family, and start asking questions like, hey, this kid's a partier, right? This kid's a gambler, right?" And his dad, Polonius, wants a servant to do this so that people will either say, "Oh no, he's a great kid," or "Yeah, he's out of control." Kind of like your parents when you go to college want to know what you're doing, probably. Okay, so that's one of the first things he does to spy. And then Claudius and Gertrude, they hire some old school chums of Hamlet, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, RG, R and G, or G and R, Ger. And they're supposed to report to the king and queen, what's going on with Hamlet. The king and queen start off the play kind of being mean, telling Hamlet to suck it up, to quit crying about his dad. And basically both of them say, hey, it's a circle of life. You're going to lose your dad. His dad lost his. They're actually very cold about it, and he's really depressed about that. So anyway, so they hire Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to keep an eye on Hamlet, to find out what's going on with him. And so Hamlet knows this too. He knows that they're being paid, and he confronts them later in the act. So obviously he doesn't like those guys. And these would be like maybe school friends that you knew back in elementary school. His really true best friend is a guy named Horatio. That's the only, person he could trust, really. Okay, so that's happening. They're spying. And then Polonius has the idea to spy on Hamlet and put Ophelia out there, his daughter, because I didn't really talk about this, but the Act 1, Laertes tells his sister, you better watch out for Hamlet. He does not mean what he's saying to you. He's not going to marry you. So basically he tells her not to sleep with him, although she may have already. You'll find out later on. There's some hints. And then the dad also says that. He's like, hey, he's a prince. What are you doing? You're not going to be able to marry him. He doesn't get to choose who he's going to marry. And he's just saying stuff to get in your pants. Okay, so everybody's kind of playing a role into all these poor characters and their lives. All right, so then Polonius says, well, Hamlet's acting all lovesick, so let's just throw you out there, and I'm going to hide behind a curtain with the king, and we're going to spy on you and Hamlet and see like if he's really crazy, or if he just is crazy in love and is sad because you haven't seen him for a while. So that's happening. And then what else is watching? Oh, and then at the end in Act 3 that you're going to read this week, Polonius decides he's going to hide in Gertrude's room again behind a curtain. That's his favorite place, I guess. I haven't tried that. I have a feeling people would know I was there. Got to be kind of skinny and small to hide behind a curtain. Anyway, and then plus you have to have curtains. I don't have any except for upstairs, so that's a problem. Okay, so he's going to hide in Gertrude's room and then report back to the king what happened. So there's all kinds of, again, it's a spying motif. Voyeurism is happening, people wanting to know secrets. Okay, towards the end of Act 2, some actors show up, and Hamlet, of course, is a big fan of plays, and he knows these guys. He used to go watch them in the city, and he's really pumped to greet them, and it's been a while since he's seen them. And then he finds out that in the cities, because he's like, why are you guys here? You were like super famous. And they tell him that a bunch of child actors are like all the rage now in the city. And so they're just traveling around performing. And so then they have a kind of an act off. Hamlet's like, hey, there was this one play that I saw you do. And it was like, basically he says, only smart people get it, like dumb people. And he talks about Polonius. They just want to be entertained. But this was like about the fall of Greece, like the Trojan horse and all that stuff. It was about that scene. So Hamlet starts to try to, remember what the words were, and he can't quite remember. And so then the actor takes over and gets all like into the scene. It's about the city of Troy, King Priam's wife, watching him get slaughtered and how she was distraught. And so the actor gets all teary-eyed, and afterwards Hamlet's really moved. And then he says, all right, we'll see you guys later. But he does tell that his actor friend, he's like, hey, if I change some of the things in the play I want you to perform tonight, can you do that? And the guy says, yeah. And then Hamlet has a soliloquy. It's a really famous one where he beats up on himself. And he does this a lot throughout the play because he hasn't taken vengeance for his dad's death. And we don't know what amount of time has gone by, but probably enough where he feels bad. So he sits down and he's basically saying, wow, look at this actor. He like had all this emotion over a fake character. This is a fictional character. And I have a real problem, a real dad that was murdered, and I'm just doing nothing. He calls himself names, and then he asks, am I a coward? That actually might be one of the quotes you want to write down, because it is a question. Again, though, in his defense, he's not a killer. He's not a warrior. And so, it must be hard thinking of walking up to someone and killing them. But then he hatches a plan of he's going to, just to make sure Claudius did what the ghost says he did, he's going to have the actors reenact a king sleeping on a bench and having a relative, like an actor relative, pour poison in his ear. And he's going to watch Claudius. Kind of brilliant, because think about that, like, you guys have probably never done anything wrong. What if you've done something wrong or said something that you didn't think anybody knew or anybody saw, and you went to a play and it was acted out in front of you, like down to the nitty-gritty details? It would be a little unnerving. And so Act 3, that's what happens, that you get to see the play, and it's crazy. Okay, so Act 2 ends with Hamlet feeling completely boxed in with only one person to trust. That's Horatio. He thinks his mom's a hoe bag. Sorry, but that's what he thinks. He's super disappointed in her. He feels like she lied about being in love with his dad, since she evidently had this affair with his uncle. And then she just doesn't seem to care about him right now. So he's upset with her. All right. Act 3. Okay. Hamlet starts by telling the actors exactly how he takes a lot of lines saying, hey, make sure you make this authentic. Don't overact, don't underact, blah, blah, blah. And then he's alone with Horatio for a bit, and he gives Horatio some mad props, to use words from back in the day, basically saying, you know what? Thank you, dude, because you're in my corner and you've always been an upstanding guy. I trust you. You don't play me like a pipe, like R&G are trying to do. And so thank you. And Horatio is, of course, very modest about that. And then we find out that he's told Horatio what the ghost said. So one other person knows, and he asks Horatio to watch the king during the play with him, just to corroborate, if they think he really killed Hamlet Sr. or not. Okay, and then the play happens, and it's such a good scene. Before the play starts, and actually during it, Hamlet's throwing out tons of insults to his mom. He basically says that women are liars, and that the lady on stage will keep her word more than a real woman would. He asks his mom, how do you like the play? famous line she answers, "The lady protests too much." You might want to write that down. And then he embarrasses Claudius and his mom because he says something about his dad just died 2 days ago, and Ophelia's like, "No, it's been 2 months." And he's like, "Oh, 2 months? Geez, that's forever. I can't believe anybody even remembers that guy." And loudly enough so that Gertrude knows that he's bashing her in front of all these people. So it's getting pretty heated. Okay, what else? Okay, and then you see the king react to that scene. He actually stands up and freaks out and then runs away. And so the king's really pissed and scared because he knows somehow Hamlet knows what he did, but he doesn't know how. Gertrude was not part of the murder, okay, but she's pissed too because she knows her son embarrassed them on stage with this play. And because part of the play was the murderer marries the queen, okay, like what happened in real life. So she's everybody's really worked up right now. And of course, Hamlet, so it's just a recipe for disaster. He calls out RNG basically after the play, saying that they're trying to play him like a pipe. And then, oh, I missed something really important. I'll get back to it. And then people keep coming to him and saying, "Hey, your mom's pissed. She wants to see you right now in a room." And then, so on his way to talk to his mom, he sees King Claudius, who has just been by himself, and he like is on his knees praying because he's scared. And he actually just says to you, "Well, I might as well try this praying thing and see if it helps." Right? It doesn't do anything for him because he doesn't mean it. But when Hamlet sees him praying, it's a perfect opportunity for him to kill Claudius, and he doesn't. And he says he changes his mind because it would mean that Claudius would go to heaven, and his dad is roaming around as a ghost, partly because he was killed before he could ask for forgiveness. Now, maybe that's just an excuse because he should have maybe done that. But anyway, so then he goes to his mom's room, and it's a huge blowout. All the things he's been bottling up come out. Part of it is first she starts trying to, say, "What are you doing, young man?" And then he turns the tables on her. He grabs two pictures, one of Claudius and one of his real dad. And then he shoves them in her face. And he's like, "Look at this guy compared to this guy. How could you go from this to this?" And he talks about them sleeping together, basically calling her a hose bag. And she gets upset. "How dare you talk to me this way?" It gets so bad that she thinks he's going to try to kill her. And she screams. Meanwhile, Polonius is behind the curtain, and he screams as well because he's scared too. And then Hamlet is so worked up, he takes his sword and stabs through the curtain and kills Polonius. So yeah, he's finally killed someone, but it's not Claudius. And more trouble for him, it's his girlfriend's dad. So, and then he is supposed to be being sent to England because the king is so mad he just wants to get rid of him. Supposedly it's a diplomatic mission, and he's going to send RNG with him to spy on him. So that's how Act 3 ends. But I missed something important. Sorry, there's so much going on. Okay, the famous "to be or not to be" speech. This is kind of in the beginning of Act 3. And what that means is to live or not to live. It's a very dark part of the play. So those lines, or that line, means he's thinking about killing himself. I mean, just think about it. His dad is dead. He's supposed to avenge his father's murder that no one else knows about except for Horatio. His mom is not who he thought she was. He's very disappointed in her. His girlfriend let her dad spy on him through her and lied about where he was when he asked her, "Where's your dad?" And she said at home when he was hiding behind the curtain, and he knew it. So he just feels like boxed in, like he doesn't want to wake up in the morning. There's some really good metaphors too in that soliloquy, the "to be or not to be." And he talks about that how we all suffer the slings and arrows of life. I actually really like that. And people say that all the time. Again, you might want to write that in your quote section. Slings and arrows are the things that come at you, us, we all have them, in life that you have no control over. So illnesses, accidents, You know, some of the slings and arrows that come at you are, you know, consequences of your own actions, right? But there are times, like for Hamlet, you know, the ghost didn't have to tell him all this stuff, and now he's having to deal with it. So slings and arrows of life. And then he gives a bunch of really cool examples if you translate them into modern language. Basically, the slings and arrows include stuff you don't control, people slandering you, all kinds of things like that. But in the end of that soliloquy, he decides to live. He says, changes his mind, so he's not going to kill himself. But anyway, that's a really kind of heavy soliloquy in the play at the beginning of Act 3. Okay, so I think that's all the important things. So again, the quiz, read Act 3, and then analyze Act 3, Scene 4, which is the big blowout between Hamlet and his mom. Okay, talk to you later.